Welcome back to Otaku no Video. As always, thank you very much for joining me for my review of Osamu Tezuka's Ayako, yet another great piece of work, thoughtful piece of work from the god of manga. He drew this in the early 70s when he was moving away from his shonen roots to tackle more serious adult themes. And this is definitely a serious adult work. It focuses on the Tenge family, which is a family of fairly wealthy landowners in rural Japan during the post-war years, and it follows them from late 40s through the early 70s. And this is a pretty darn messed up family. I mean, there's rape, incest, murder, extortion, all sorts of nastiness going on in this family. And the story centers on Ayako, who is an innocent girl caught up in the center of this. She's a daughter of the family. And the central conceit is that she is forced to live basically sequestered away in their basement for years and years and years because of what she's seen. And she's this innocent caught in this web and what that does to her and the results for the family and so forth. Tezuka is a very moral person, was a very moral person. So this is not just dark stuff happening. There are definitely moral consequences to everything that goes on. That's kind of one of the scary things about the stories. You see all this bad stuff happening and you think, this is not going to end well for anyone. And so you start reading the story. A couple of possible stumbling blocks here. It is a bit tough to keep track of all the characters. There are several dozen characters in this. They are well differentiated both in terms of personality and character design. So you can pretty easily visually tell who's who. Most of them are pretty one or two dimensional characters because this is a tragedy focusing on themes of good and evil, mostly evil. But this is more melodrama than anything else, or more drama, I suppose. The characters are a lot of times fairly straightforward. Fortunately, the Tenge family itself stays relatively small throughout the storyline, in some cases through murder. But the good thing is that makes the characters, those core characters, easy to keep track of. You know who all of those are. The other stumbling block is the dialogue. Because this is a rural family, Tezuka had the characters use rural dialects in the original. That's carried over here by actually typing out such things in the dialogue. So going to the store is typed out as going to TH''STORE, that kind of a stuff. And that can be a bit difficult to parse. I don't know if it was a good or a bad decision, overall. It did certainly give the Tenge family that feeling of being rural and being not part of the greater cosmopolitan life of growing post-war Japan. But it did make the story difficult to parse at times. I mean, one of the nice things about manga is you can kind of move through it quickly. It is meant to be read rapidly and move quickly, and that is a bit of a stumbling block, can be. Fortunately, each character has their own distinctive way of speaking. Some of them are very direct and commanding, some of them are more passive and simple, some of them have a more roundabout way of speaking, things like that. So that's good. The story itself is long and complex. It covers nearly 30 years of history, and it really interweaves both the history of post-war Japan, what was going on there, and the Tenge family, and how that sort of correlates, if you will. And the relationships between the Tenge family get increasingly complex and screwed up, frankly, as the story develops. And it is a tragedy. I mean, this is about how bad moral decisions will have bad moral consequences. And that's really helped by the artwork, which is more realistic than the average Tezuka manga. There are almost no sight gags, and there's almost no comedy. Often Tezuka would add some comedy to lighten the mood. Doesn't do that much at all in Ayako. A few bits here and there, but this is a pretty stark and bleak story, and the artwork itself is quite stark. It's one of the great things about Tezuka is how multi-layered he can be. Just as the characters are kind of caught in the web of their own poor choices, and they're kind of sucked into the Tenge family, and they just can't escape. Similarly, they're kind of stuck in the Tenge household. The vast majority of the story, well, a large majority of the story takes place at the Tenge house. Everyone's kind of stuck there. You can't really get away from it. And it's just this wonderful multi-layered approach to that as you see how that really is true in their lives. There is no fantasy, there is no science fiction in this. This is a realistic story of real people. And sadly, it's quite believable. Every single evil deed perpetrated by some member of the Tenge family household is logical and understandable. You don't sympathize with it, but you do understand why you wouldn't want that to get out, why you take that course of action. It's wonderful to see a story which presents very evil things in a way that isn't just, they're not Nazis. They're not doing this to try to take over the world. They're doing this to protect themselves and protect other people and so forth and so on. It's really gripping. And that's the one thing about Ayako. I mean, I've talked here about how sad it is and how rough it can be. But this is a really gripping story of how moral choices change things. And there's a lot going on. There's a murder mystery. There's lots of intrigue and such. And there's lots of wonderful little moments with people. A lot of Ayako is people trying to find happiness, trying to find contentment within all of this stuff going on. So, good on Tezuka there. I mean, I certainly had no problem reading through Ayako, and I normally don't like, sad, tragic, everyone's screwing everyone else's lives up stories. This is not that. That does happen, but it has Tezuka's overall theme of hope, that despite all of this terrible things happening, it doesn't mean the world is going to end. It doesn't mean that nobody can find happiness or contentment. It doesn't mean that everyone is completely screwed. It means that just there are going to be consequences and bad ones for what these people are doing. So that's Ayako. The entire thing is available in one giant peach-colored volume from Vertical. Be aware there is a naked Ayako on the cover, and it's pretty clear that she's young. So, be careful of that. And the back has a lovely image of someone hanging themselves. So this is not something just sort of take to school and read. That'll probably be confiscated pretty quickly. And there's a fair amount of sexual content in here. It's not explicit, but there's a lot of that going on. So just be aware. And a fair amount of violence too, actually. Some pretty strong violence as well. But it's a wonderful, gripping adult story. Mature, sophisticated storytelling, as I like, and I hope we get more of. So good on Osamu Tezuka if you want to get it. It is out there. So those are my views on Ayako, and if you want to talk about Ayako or other cool anime and manga, please stop my website at otakunovideo.net, and I look forward to talking to you about it. So until next time, thanks for watching, and may you follow the path of good.